Today we're going to talk about how to rotate figures about the origin. So I have A is at -1, 1, B is at 2, 3, and C is at 6, 4. So we're just going to do 7 different examples on how to rotate this figure. So again, if you want to, you can graph this and then rotate it visually. However, it's hard for me to do that, so I just like to memorize these rules and then plug in it in a chart, because of course you know I love charts, and then just figure out my A prime, B prime, and C prime that way. So over here I've drawn this little figure, I guess you could call it, and you'll see that if I start here, so I'm starting right here, if I rotate 90 degrees clockwise, counterclockwise, because the clock runs this way originally, so counterclockwise I'm going to go 90 degrees this way. Okay, so my X and Y axis here, this is 90 degrees. This would be 180 counterclockwise, this would be 270 counterclockwise, and this would be 360, which would make a full circle, which is why we have a full circle here. Now if I go 90 counterclockwise, which is a quarter of the circle, so from here to here that's 90 counterclockwise, if that's a quarter of the circle, then the other 3/4 clockwise, which is this much, 3/4 is 270 degrees. So again, this is 90 degrees, going 1/4 counterclockwise. So if I go clockwise, I go 90, 180, and 270 degrees. So I have 90 counterclockwise, which is the same as 270 clockwise. Now if I go 180 counterclockwise, that's at half the circle, counterclockwise is 180, then clockwise is another half, which would just be 180 as well. So that one doesn't change. If I rotate 270 counterclockwise, so I go 3/4 of the circle here, 270 degrees, then I've only gone 90 degrees the clockwise direction. So again, 270 counterclockwise is equal to only 90 clockwise. And then of course if I do 360 counterclockwise, that's the same as 360 clockwise. So we're going to use that for different ones. For example, E here, we rotate 90 clockwise. So if I go 90 clockwise, which would be this direction, and that's equal to 270 counterclockwise. And what's important knowing between the clockwise and the counterclockwise and what's equivalent is that our rules that I have given you in your notes is only for a counterclockwise direction. However, if an example like this one here asks for clockwise, you need to know what rule to use in the counterclockwise direction. Alright, so our first example here, we're going to rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. The rule is -yx. So for A, I'm just going to take the y coordinate, make it negative. So that's going to be -1, and x stays the same at -1. B will be -3, and the x stays the same. And then C becomes -4, and the x stays the same at 6. So for rotating 90 degrees counterclockwise, A prime is at -1, -1, B prime is at -3, 2, and C prime is -4, 6. Now when we rotate these are all about the origin. So my fixed point that I'm rotating around is the origin at 0, 0. Alright, part B here. We're going to rotate 180 degrees counterclockwise. The rule is if I rotate counterclockwise 180, -x, -y. So I'm just going to take my A, B, and C, and then x's and the y's, and take them times -1. So since A is at -1, 1, negative times a negative is a 1, and then a -y, that's going to make A at 1, -1. B is at 2, 3, so to make those negative, that becomes -2 and -3. And C is at 6, 4, so that becomes -6 and -4. So A prime is at 1, -1, B prime is at -2, -3, and C prime is at -6, -4. Let's keep going. I'm going to write down my points down here again before I scoot up the paper. B is at 2, 3. Alright, so now we're going to rotate our figure 270 degrees counterclockwise. If I go 270 counterclockwise, the rule is y -x. You'll notice when we went 90 counterclockwise, it was negative yx. Now it's y negative x. Alright, a prime is going to be at 1, and since x is negative 1, I have to take that times a negative again, becomes a positive, so 1, 1. B prime is going to be at 3, negative 2, and C prime will be at 4, negative 6. So A prime is 1, 1, B prime is 3, negative 2, and C prime is 4, negative 6. Alright, another one. Almost there. Last one, we're rotating 360 degrees counterclockwise. If I go in a full circle, then I end up in the same spot, so that's just x and y. So that's just going to be negative 1, 1, 2, 3, and 6, 4. So A prime has the exact same coordinates as A, B prime has the same coordinates as B, and C prime has the same coordinates as C. Because again, if I rotate 360 degrees, I end up in the same spot. We've got a few more. If we rotate 90 degrees clockwise, then that, again, according to our picture, if I go 90 degrees clockwise, which is this direction right here, then that's the same as going 270 the counterclockwise direction. So when I figure out what my new points are, rotating 90 clockwise, I'm going to use the same rule that rotating 270 counterclockwise uses. So if you go back and compare, this is the exact same rule, y negative x. So A prime is going to end up being at 1, and since A was at negative 1, a negative times a negative makes a positive. B prime will be 3, negative 2, and C prime will be 4, negative 6. So A prime is 1, 1, B prime is 3, negative 2, and C prime is 4, negative 6. And again, the reason I knew that is because if I go 90 clockwise, that's the same as 270 counterclockwise direction. So I use the same rule for the 270 counterclockwise to get these points. And if you go back and compare to example C, you'll see that they are the same points. Alright, S here. If we rotate 270 degrees counterclockwise, then that's the same as going 90 if we rotate 270 clockwise, that's the same as 90 counterclockwise. So this is the same rule. Again, we're going 270 clockwise, which is the same as 90 counterclockwise. So my points are at negative 1, negative 1. B prime is negative 3, 2. C prime is negative 4, 6. And again, this chart is definitely helpful, but also knowing this little figure here, knowing which direction I go in and what the equivalent is for the clockwise or the counterclockwise direction. So for our last example, we're going to rotate 180 clockwise. And again, if I go 180 clockwise, which would be this way, that's the same as 180 counterclockwise. Excuse me. So again, I'm just going to use the same rule that I used for the 180 counterclockwise, which is negative x, negative y. So A is going to be at 1, negative 1, B will be at negative 2, negative 3, and C will be at negative 6, negative 4. And that's how you rotate figures about the origin.